On today's episode, I made this hammock frame for my garden. Hi, I'm Sean. Welcome to Sean in the Shed. For today's project, you will need 7 8-foot lengths of 2x4 timber. To make the hammock, I followed a guide from Bob Villa on bobvilla.com, and I will place a link to the actual full cut list and everything down below in the description. My next cut has to be a 60-degree bevel on a piece of wood, but for those of you who use a miter saw, know it generally goes up to 45 or 50 degrees, and anything beyond that becomes a problem. What you can do is you can cut a 30-degree wedge, place it on the miter saw bed, and then put the saw to 30 degrees and run the wood along the length of the bevel of the wedge that you've created, giving you a 60-degree flip away from the actual fence of the saw. But when you're working on a large length of timber and you've got a miter saw that's sat on a bench like this where you can't actually pivot the piece of wood round, it becomes a problem. So I need to cut 60 degrees, 45 degrees on the square. Luckily, my miter gauge for my table saw goes up to 60 degrees. So I've set it to 60 degrees. I've used it to mark the angle on the piece of wood. And this is where I could get my handheld circular saw, my jigsaw. But in this instance, I think I'm going to go old school. I'm going to get out my hand saw and cut the two pieces. Luckily, let's get some arm action going. Started the cut with it. So one of the things I like about projects like this is where 95% of your timber is cut, done and dusted in the first hour or so. After that, it's a case of assembly. So we've done the cutting, we're now going to do some drilling in preparation of assembly, then we'll get the ironmongery out and we'll start to get this thing put together. The only timber that's going to be left to cut is the feet, but we'll get to that later. So let's get drilling.
Just a minute till you know what I'm good for.
So I have the base frame, I have the first end piece, I've clamped the base piece down, I've clamped the upright down into the relevant position. So the two 30-degree bevels connect together to form a nice end piece. This is one of the small 15-inch strips with the 30-degree bevel on. That basically will fit in here. I've already pre-drilled the two holes inside this, so I'm going to use my drill. I use this as a guide to make sure I'm going in the right direction and that I'm perpendicular to the wood. So I'll go straight down, mark the two holes into here, get them drilled out as much as possible. Then we'll drill through them, get some coach bolts through, and fasten this in place. Then once that's done, we'll put the slant piece in, the two with the two 60-degree bevels on, and that will hold the actual end cap in place. And then we just have to do the other end and then the other side of the actual entire piece. So we'll get these two bits done. And then we'll see where we are. So this isn't the final assembly, this is just the pre-assembly. I'm going to take all the hardware off, I'm going to put some glue on the timber. I'm going to replace the bolts with, I'm going to use the same bolts, but I'm going to put lots of large washers in to hold everything in place. So I'll get this side glued up, I'll get it all prepared, and then I will probably leave it overnight and come back and do the second half in the morning, and then continue. So when I assembled this, I forgot to put in the noggins that go at the top of the actual uprights. So I've now got to drill them in now, but it's handy because I've pre-drilled the bits that go inside. That means I've now got some accurate drill holes for both sides of the piece, and it's going to keep me perpendicular to the wood. So I'll go through this one, I'll go through, and I'll carry on drilling until I hit the other side, and I'll do the same from underneath. Once that's done, I'll fit them with a large M6 bolt from one side, hammer it in so the square fitting goes into the hole and bites in. On the other end, I'll put an M6 washer, and that'll be attached with a small M6 nut. Once that's done, I'll take the impact driver and I'll tighten them up as much as possible. Once that's done, that's the main frame in place. Then all it's a case of doing is making the feet, fitting the hardware onto this bit, because this is where the hardware is going to sit on the end of the hammock, and it's where it's going to suspend from. That's my hard fixing for where the actual hammock's going to fit on. I'll repeat it down the other end, and then it's a case of stringing the hammock up, and it's nearly time to get a beer out. So I've made the frame. Next thing is the hammock. Just that everyday hammock from Amazon, nothing fancy. And wasp. So that's how I made this week's project, this lovely wooden hammock frame. This is just a Amazon Essentials hammock that I've purchased to go in it. You can buy fancier ones. This is rated for 2 people up to about 150 kilos. I need to tension the straps a little bit. When you first put them in, they give to start with. When you first put the weight on, so I need to just adjust them now. Now I've had a bit of bedding in time. Jethro tried to jump in the hammock with me, so that kind of gave it a little bit extra weight. I can see this getting a bit of use. It's nice and relaxing once you're in it. It was a simple project. It took longer than it should have done, only because of the size of it. I got it part built in the workshop, and then I had to move it outside, and then moving it around a ridge, and to begin with it was quite cumbersome. But once I'd actually got the frame and bolted together and it was all ready, it was all good to go. It's all pressure treated timber, so I don't need to paint it yet, but probably next year I will give it its first coat of paint, like I do with the fence panels in the garden, and I've got to recoat the garden furniture. So yeah, all in all, a nice easy project. If I could do it again, would I? Yes. I'd get a longer drill bit for starters. I'd rather drill straight through all 3 pieces of timber at the same time. That's where I had some issues with drill holes lining up. I did my best to try and keep them together, but it didn't quite work. But other than that, it just feels solid. It's not bad for a little quick project. Right, I'll see you next time on the next episode of Shaun in the Shed. Hopefully it'll be out in the next couple of weeks. Who knows? Life's getting a bit hectic at the moment. See you next time.